My name's Rita, and if you told me my life would turn into a whirlwind drama, I'd have laughed. I'm 35, a journalist, and not the kind who sits around. I'm always on the go, chasing stories, making headlines. I've got a daughter, Emily, she's the light of my life. 8 years old and already the boss of our small apartment in the city. Life was ticking along until 2 years ago. I was covering a story on the city's new recycling initiative. Sounds boring, right? But then I met David. He was the mayor's right-hand man, and let me tell you, he had this air about him. Smart, quick on his feet, and knew how to hold a conversation. 12 years my senior, but who's counting? We hit it off right away. It started with casual chats after the interview sessions. You're doing great work, he'd say. This city needs more journalists like you. Flattery? Maybe, but it worked. David and I, we didn't waste time. Got married a year after meeting. He's got a daughter too, Sarah. She's 20, off at college in another city. Can't say we're close. She's got this cold vibe, especially towards Emily. I remember the first time they met. Hi Sarah, this is Emily, I'd said, trying to sound upbeat. Sarah had looked at her, not mean, but not warm either. Hi, she'd muttered, then turned away, lost in her phone. Emily tugged at my shirt. Mom, does she not like me? I brushed her hair back. Don't worry about it, honey. She's just different. David was a lifesaver, though. My job, it's crazy hours, you know? He started picking up Emily from school, making her lunch. He was good at it, and Emily seemed to like him. David's funny, Mom, she'd say. He makes the best sandwiches. Our apartment, it's cozy. 2 bedrooms, a small kitchen, and a living room that's seen better days. But it's home. Emily's room is a burst of pink and posters of pop stars I can't name. David moved in some of his stuff too, mostly books and a few old records. He's into jazz, which is fine, but not my cup of tea. Rita, you should try listening to this, he'd say, putting on some old record. It's classic. I'd smile, nodding along. Sure, I'll give it a shot. But between you and me, I never did. We settled into this routine, the 3 of us. It was nice, normal. Or so I thought. But like they say, normal's just what you're used to, until it's not. Things started to shift, but it wasn't like I woke up one day and everything was different. It was slow, like a faucet dripping until the sink's full. Emily, she's always been this bundle of energy, you know? Always running around, laughing, her eyes sparkling with all kinds of mischief. But then, it was like someone turned down her brightness. She became quieter, more like she was walking on eggshells. One night, I was tucking her into bed, and she was just lying there, staring at the ceiling. I brushed her hair, trying to make her laugh. Hey, Space Cadet, you planning a trip to the moon? She didn't even crack a smile. Just whispered, no, Mom. That was my cue. What's up? You're not your usual self. She turned her head, not meeting my eyes. I'm okay. I sat down next to her. You sure? You've been kinda quiet lately. She shrugged. Just tired, I guess. Tired? At 8? I wasn't buying it. But I let it slide, didn't want to push her. Okay, kiddo. If you say so. But you know you can tell me anything, right? She nodded, but there was something off. I kissed her forehead and turned off the light. Good night, love. As I closed the door, I heard her whisper, Night, Mom. I went to the kitchen where David was. He was doing his usual, flipping through some papers, probably work stuff. Hey, I said. You notice anything off with Emily lately? He didn't look up. Off? Like what? Like she's not herself. More quiet, kinda down. He shrugged, still not looking at me. Kids have moods, Rita. She's probably fine. Yeah, maybe. I wasn't convinced, but what else could I say? The next few days, it was the same. Emily was like a little shadow, just there but not really. It got me thinking, maybe something at school? I decided to ask her about it. I waited for a good time, right after dinner when we were clearing up. Hey, everything okay, at school? She was stacking plates, not looking at me. Yeah, it's okay. You sure? No one's bothering you or anything? She paused, then shook her head. No, everyone's nice. I wanted to believe her, but moms know, right? There's this gut feeling when something's not right. I let it go for the moment, didn't want to push her. That weekend, we were doing laundry. Emily was helping me fold clothes. That's when I saw it. A bruise on her arm. Not a small one either. I tried to keep my voice steady. What's that on your arm? She pulled her sleeve down quick. Oh, I fell at the playground. You fell? That looks bad, honey. She avoided my eyes. It's nothing, really. I wanted to dig deeper, but her face, it was like she was scared. Scared of what? I couldn't figure it out. Okay, if you say so. But be careful, okay? Yeah, Mom. I watched her for a moment. She went back to folding, like nothing happened. But I couldn't shake the feeling. Something was up, and I needed to find out what. It was eating at me, like a splinter you can't get out. Something was off with Emily, and I couldn't just let it go. That bruise, her quietness, it wasn't like her. I had to figure it out, but I didn't know where to start. Then, this idea hit me. Why not use one of those smart watches? The ones that can record stuff. I mean, if something's happening at school, maybe I could catch it. I got the watch, a sleek little thing. Told Emily it was an early birthday present. Look at this, Em. You can call me with it if you ever need to, I said, trying to sound upbeat. She looked at it, a bit puzzled but then smiled. Thanks, Mom. It's cool. I showed her how to use it, but I didn't tell her about the recording part. Felt kind of sneaky, but I had to know. The next few days, I was anxious, waiting for something, anything. Finally, when she was in bed, I took the watch to check the recordings. My heart was racing as I started listening. At first, it was just kid stuff. Her talking to friends, teachers in the background, normal school noises. But then, I heard something that made my blood run cold. It was David's voice, but not the David I knew. He was angry, really angry. You think you can just mess around, huh? You're such a fool, Emily. I couldn't believe it. This wasn't the David who made sandwiches and joked around. My hands were shaking as I listened. There was a sound, like a slap, and then Emily crying. Please, stop. I won't do it again. I felt sick. My David, hitting my little girl? I had to stop the recording. My mind was racing. This couldn't be happening. But it was, right there in the recording. I didn't sleep that night. I just sat there, thinking, trying to make sense of it. In the morning, I saw Emily off to school, acting like everything was normal. But as soon as she left, I called in sick to work. I had to figure this out. David came home that evening, all smiles like usual. Hey, how was your day? He asked, hanging up his coat. I was boiling inside, but I kept my cool. Oh, you know, the usual. Emily's got a school project coming up. She's pretty excited. He just nodded. That's good. Kids need stuff to keep them busy. I wanted to scream at him, ask him why he did it. But I couldn't, not yet. I needed to be sure, needed more proof. The next few days, I kept a close eye on Emily, on David. Everything seemed normal, but I knew it wasn't. I kept checking the watch, but there was nothing like before. Just once was enough though. Once was too much. I was in a daze, thinking about that recording. It kept replaying in my head, over and over. David's voice, Emily's cries. I needed to do something, but what? I couldn't just confront David, not without a plan. And Emily, I needed to talk to her, get her side. That evening, I sat Emily down. We were in her room, surrounded by her toys and drawings. Honey, we need to talk about something important, I started, trying to sound calm. She looked up, her eyes wide. Is everything okay, Mom? I took a deep breath. It's about David. Has he ever hurt you? Her eyes darted away. She fidgeted with the hem of her shirt. What do you mean? Emily, I need you to be honest with me. Has David ever hit you? There was a long pause. Then, she nodded, slowly, her eyes filling with tears. Yes, she whispered. Why didn't you tell me, baby? He said not to. He said you'd be mad at me. She was crying now. I pulled her into my arms. Oh, I'm so sorry. This is not your fault, okay? You did nothing wrong. We sat there for a while, just holding each other. My mind was racing. I had to protect her, get her away from David. The next day, I made a plan. I'd collect more evidence, something solid. Then, I'd go to the police. But first, I needed to keep Emily safe. I called my mom. Mom, I need a favor. Can Emily stay with you for a few days? I've got a big project at work. Of course, dear. Is everything all right? Yeah, just busy. Thanks, Mom. That was one problem solved. But now, the hard part. Gathering evidence against David. I didn't know how to do it, but I had to try. I started by talking to Sarah, David's daughter. Maybe she knew something, could help somehow. I called her, my heart pounding. Sarah, it's Rita. We need to talk. It's about your dad. There was silence on the line. Then, what about him? I think he's been hurting Emily. I have a recording, but I need more. Did he ever hurt you? Another long silence. Then, a quiet, yes. It was like a floodgate opened. Sarah told me everything. How David had been abusive to her, how she was scared of him. I couldn't believe I hadn't seen it before. Getting more evidence against David wasn't going to be a walk in the park. I knew that. The guy was slick, always had his guard up. But what he didn't know was that I was onto him, and I was not about to let him get away with hurting my daughter. First things first, I needed to keep it cool around him, act like nothing was up. Morning, David, I said over breakfast, keeping my voice light. He grunted something back, buried in his newspaper. You got plans today? He asked, not even looking up. Just the usual work stuff, I replied, stirring my coffee. Meeting with the mayor. You know how it is. Oh, I knew how it was all right. Meetings and schmoozing, that was David's game. But my game had just begun. I dropped Emily off at my mom's place. You'll be fine here, sweetheart, I told her, trying to sound cheerful. Grandma's got that new puzzle for you. Emily smiled, a bit. I like puzzles, she said, hugging me tight. Me too, baby. Me too, I whispered, kissing her forehead. Once I was sure Emily was safe, it was time to get to work. I called Sarah. We need to meet. It's time we put a plan together. She agreed to meet at a cafe downtown. It was quiet, the kind of place where you could talk without being overheard. Sarah looked tense when I got there. So, what's the plan? She asked, her voice low. We need to record him, get him on tape admitting what he's done. To you, to Emily. It's the only way. Sarah nodded, biting her lip. I can try talking to him. Maybe get him to say something. It was risky, but it was all we had. Be careful, Sarah. He can't know we're onto him. I know. I'll be careful. We spent the next hour going over every detail. What to say, how to say it, when to push, when to back off. It was like setting a trap, and we had to be perfect. The next few days were a blur. I kept my distance from David, made excuses to stay late at work, anything to avoid being alone with him. Sarah did her part. She called David, made up some story about needing to talk. "Dad, I've been thinking about when I was a kid," she said on the phone. I could hear her voice, tense but steady. "There are things we never really talked about." David took the bait. "We can talk, sure. Come over for dinner." That was it. Sarah was going in, wired to record everything. My heart was in my throat the whole evening, waiting for her call. It came late that night. "I got it, Rita. I got him to talk." I felt a mix of relief and dread. "Good work, Sarah. Bring it over. We need to listen to it, make sure we have what we need." She came over, looking like she'd just gone 10 rounds in the ring. We sat at my kitchen table, listening to the recording. David's voice filled the room, calm at first, then getting angrier. "You always were a difficult child, Sarah. Always asking for it." My blood boiled listening to him. But then, he said it, clear as day. "I did what I had to do. To you, to Emily. You both needed to learn." That was it. The confession. I felt sick to my stomach, but at the same time, I felt a surge of triumph. We had him. "We take this to the police, first thing tomorrow," I said, my voice firm. Sarah nodded, looking exhausted but determined. "Yeah, it's time he paid for what he's done." It was a long night. Neither of us slept much. But we had what we needed. David was going down, and I was going to make sure of it. The morning sun was barely up, but I was already wide awake, my mind racing. Today was the day I'd confront David. The evidence was there, on my kitchen table, a little recorder that held his confession. My hands were shaking as I thought about what I had to do. I couldn't back down now. I heard David getting ready, the usual clatter in the bathroom, the sound of his shoes on the hardwood floor. I braced myself as he came into the kitchen. "Morning, Rita," he said, grabbing his coffee. He sounded so normal, like it was just another day. I took a deep breath. "We need to talk, David." He raised an eyebrow, a slight smirk on his face. "About what?" "About what you've done. To Emily. To Sarah." His face changed then, the smirk disappearing. "What are you talking about?" I felt a surge of anger. "I know everything, David. It's over. I know you hurt Emily. I know you hurt your own daughter." He laughed, a cold, harsh sound. "You think that will hold up? You think anyone will believe you over me?" I stood up, my hands clenched into fists. "They will when they hear this." I hit play on the recorder, and his voice filled the room, admitting what he'd done. David's face went pale. He reached for the recorder, but I snatched it away. "No, you don't get to hide from this. Not anymore." He stood up, his chair scraping against the floor. "You're going to ruin everything. My career, my life. You did that yourself when you hurt those girls. It's over, David." He looked desperate, cornered. "You can't prove anything. It's your word against mine." I shook my head, a bitter laugh escaping my lips. "No, it's your word against yours. You confessed, David. It's all here." He was silent then, just staring at me, his face a mask of defeat. "I'm going to the police," I said, my voice steady. "And I'm taking this with me. You're going to pay for what you've done." He didn't say anything as I walked past him, out of the kitchen. I didn't look back. I didn't need to. I had everything I needed. Walking into the police station, my heart was hammering in my chest like a drum. I never thought I'd be in a situation like this, but here I was, about to turn in the man I once thought I loved. The officer at the desk looked up as I approached. Can I help you, ma'am? I took a deep breath. Yes, I need to report a case of domestic abuse. I have evidence. My voice was shaking, but I held the recorder tightly in my hand like a lifeline. He looked at me, his expression turning serious. All right, let's go to an interview room and you can tell me everything. The next hours were a blur of questions and statements. I played them the recording, watched their faces change as David's voice filled the room. It felt surreal, like I was watching someone else's life fall apart. When I finally left the police station, I felt empty and exhausted, but there was a sense of relief too. The truth was out, and there was no turning back. I called Sarah. It's done. I gave them the recording. There was a pause, then Sarah's voice, firm but emotional. Thank you, Rita. For everything. We're in this together, I said, trying to sound more confident than I felt. The next few weeks were a whirlwind. David was arrested, and the story hit the news. Headlines screamed about the mayor's assistant and the shocking allegations against him. My world was upside down, but I knew I'd done the right thing. The legal battle was tough. David had a good lawyer, the kind that knows how to twist words and play on technicalities. But we had the truth on our side. Sarah testified, her voice breaking as she told the court about her father's abuse. I could see the jury's faces, the horror and sympathy as they listened to her story. Then it was my turn. Ms. Stevens, can you tell the court about the recording you made? The prosecutor asked. I nodded, taking a deep breath. I recorded Mr. Johnson admitting to abusing my daughter and his own daughter. I wanted to protect my child and expose the truth. David's lawyer tried to shake me, questioning my motives, suggesting I was out for revenge. But I stood my ground. This isn't about revenge. It's about protecting my daughter and getting justice for what he did. The trial seemed to drag on forever, but finally, the day of the verdict came. I sat in the courtroom, my hands clenched in my lap, waiting for the jury to return. We find the defendant, David Johnson, guilty of child abuse, the foreman said, and it was like a weight lifted off my shoulders. David was sentenced to prison and colossal monetary compensation. The judge's words were harsh, condemning his actions and the pain he'd caused. As he was led away, I felt a mix of emotions. Relief, sadness, anger. But above all, I felt a sense of closure. The aftermath was hard. I had to rebuild my life, help Emily heal from the trauma she'd experienced. But we were free from David's shadow, and that was what mattered. I focused on my work, on being there for Emily. We started therapy, both of us, to work through everything that had happened. It wasn't easy, but we were getting there, day by day. We moved into a new house. It was smaller than the old one, but it was ours, and it was a fresh start. The first day we moved in, Emily ran around the house, exploring every nook and cranny. I get to pick my room, she asked, her eyes wide with excitement. Of course, kiddo. Whichever one you want, I replied, watching her dash from room to room. She picked the one with the big window that looked out over the backyard. I can see the stars from here, Mom. I smiled. Then it's perfect for you. Unpacking was a chore, but it felt good, like we were putting our lives back together, piece by piece. We decided to paint the living room together. I gave Emily a paintbrush. What do you think? Blue or green? She dipped the brush in the blue paint. Blue, like the sky on a sunny day. So blue it is, I said, and we got to work, turning the room into our own little piece of the sky. One afternoon, while we were taking a break from painting, there was a knock on the door. It was Sarah. She stood there, a bit awkward, shifting from foot to foot. Hey, Rita, can I come in? I was surprised but happy to see her. Of course, come in. We sat in the half-painted living room, on boxes that served as chairs. I wanted to say thank you, Sarah said, looking down at her hands. For everything you did. For me, for Emily. I reached out and took her hand. We're family, Sarah. That's what families do. She smiled, a small, tentative smile. I brought something. For Emily. She handed Emily a small, wrapped package. Emily looked at the package. Is that for me? Sarah nodded. Yeah, I thought you might like it. Emily tore open the package. Inside was a book about stars and planets. Her face lit up. Wow, thank you, Sarah. Sarah looked relieved, happy. You're welcome. Things were still tough, but moments like that made it all worth it. We were building something new, something strong. Emily went back to school, and she was doing well, making friends, coming back to her old self. And me, I went back to work, throwing myself into stories, into uncovering truths, just like I always did. But now, I had a new perspective, a new understanding of the struggles people faced. Life wasn't perfect, but it was ours. We had our little world, our safe haven, and we had each other. And that was more than enough. It was a new beginning, a chance to heal, to grow, to love. And we were ready for it, ready for whatever came our way. Together, we were unstoppable.